Welcome back to my staying, my fellow fans of the written word. Here we are, back again with some more of that good Wheel of Time. Let's cut the banter short, shall we? And just do a recap. As short as it's possible, but a lot of things happened in these 10 chapters. So, this time the bulk of the narrative is firmly in Perrin's POV. So, Perrin is still in the ways, and at the exit point they are attacked by Trollocs, but they manage to escape, him and his group, by the skin of their teeth, essentially. And the only way they managed to do it, because the light blinded them and the exit, and because the Black Wind, Bachin Shin, was, well, having everyone for lunch. So they managed to exit the ways at the two rivers, and Loyal sealed it. Well, he shut it down. Also, he observed that something is just decimating the wildlife around two rivers. He has one of his wolf dreams again, and he encounters someone in the dreams, a figure called Slayer. He is christened Slayer by the wolf, and apparently he's a figure who is in the dream world in flesh. He is not projecting his image, his consciousness, into the dream world like everyone else, like Egwene when she's dream walking, or the Amos. He is there in flesh, and he is killing the wolves inside, which is apparently a new thing, or not even maybe a new thing for Perrin, because he did not think it was possible. For him, he thought this is, well, for the lack of the better word, a purgatory, or just a afterlife in which the wolves wait to be born again and reincarnated as wolves again. So he also wakes up with news that he knows that something is up in Two Rivers, and something is up in Two Rivers indeed. He goes to Two Rivers, and he encounters on the way there, to Emond's Field, he finds, well, that Rand's house has been burned down some time ago, weeks ago even, and he goes to Master Elvire, and from Master Elvire he finds out that unfortunately his family has been killed, and it was blamed on the Trollocs, surprisingly not on White Cloaks, but more about that later. He has a sobering thought of not giving himself foolishly to White Cloaks, and instead he wants to rescue his people from them, because they're kind of in a Stockholm syndrome here. They've come to rely on them. They think that the White Cloaks are protecting them, even though they've imprisoned and arrested several of them, and they kind of just spread the neighbor against neighbor mentality amongst the Emond's Fielders, which is awful. So he decides to do something about it. He also finds out that apparently, yes, the guy called what did he call himself? But essentially, Padan Fain, his alter ego. He is an advisor to White Cloaks, and he does not acknowledge his old name. He also learned that, well, surprise, surprise, Padan Fain was the one who insisted that White Cloaks kill Perrin's family, and he had to cover it up. The White Cloak leader, Bernhold, had to cover it up and blame it on Trollocs. And to be fair, not to be fair, that's a wrong expression here. Trollocs are afoot, but they are afoot because, well, Padan Fain is around, and Padan Fain is a noted dark friend, isn't he? We also find out that Bernhold doesn't trust Fain at all, because his people are also getting killed on missions, which is upsetting. But Padan Fain has trust and confidence of the Lord Commander, which brings him little joy. Also, Fain has kind of earned himself a reputation of sorts. He has killed 2 grey men that were sent to kill him, which was kind of seen as a heroic deed by other White Cloaks, which I'm still not convinced if he did it himself just to earn himself that reputation or not. But back to Perrin. Perrin learns that he is not alone here in Two Rivers. 2 Aes Sedai are around as well. Our old friend Varen Sedai and Alana Sedai, who is somewhat of a new character, not someone we spent much time until now. So they are in the area, but for different reasons. They kind of been sent on a recruiting mission of sorts, because the blood is strong in Two Rivers, and while other areas produced very little to no candidates, here they had Nynaeve and Egwene and Trita Viren, not to mention one of them being, I think, Dragon Reborn, well, they were not empty-handed. They found a bunch of Aes Sedai recruits, a bunch of candidates. He also meets several families, and he kind of takes charge, because he meets Rand's father and Tam, and he meets Mad's father as well, who are in hiding because they are just on White Cloak's shit list. And we also learned that Master blacksmith that trained Perrin and his wife are in prison, as well as Matt's family. And he kind of takes charge. He convinces villagers to resist, to gather them around. No one is arguing against it, and some of the young men he recruits, they agree to go with him to free the prisoners from the White Cloaks. So they have this black ops operation of freeing people from White Cloaks, and yeah, they managed to do it. They managed to free them, and he also meets, prior to them going out and to rescue the prisoners, he meets a man called Lord Luke, a very enigmatic person, because there are many questions around him. Like Perrin describes him, he sort of instantly hates him because, well, in his mind, the two river folk, they never fawn over nobility, and they seem to fawn over him, and there's just something about him that makes him uneasy. And we also learn that he is one of the hunters for the horn, but more about that later. Back to our two fledgling lads, Rand and Matt. They stumble in the desert, they come back, and they go through the ways to the Aiel camp. They're both in a pretty bad shape. Lots of cuts and bleeding and several wounds. They go back to the camp to meet the wise ones. And wise ones are waiting for them with a lot of water and stuff. Now, what do they find out? Before we go on to the big reveal, if we can call it that, we also find out that both Avienda and Moraine went into the city, and they're still not back. More than that, 7 days have passed, and apparently if you don't get back after day 10, you're lost forever, because no one ever returned after 10 days of being in the Forbidden City. So they're back in the camp, and the guy Kuladin, he demands to know an explanation where Muradin is. He accuses him of slaying Muradin. He even attacks him and Matt, and accuses him of, breaking the rules because they have weapons. But Matt has a weapon that he got in the Terangrial, and Rand just manifests that flaming sword of his, and he just storms off like a big crybaby as he is, with promises of revenge, but not before Rand reveals his badass dragon tattoos, which mark him as the Chief of Chiefs. These kind of scaly things on his forearms, both of his forearms, and so he is then revealed, at least to the onlookers, as he who comes with the dawn. Everyone retreats to their tents, and Rand is shocked to find that Moraine is gone, because first of all, both of them are pretty badly wounded, and the wise ones, even though they can channel, they do not have healing capabilities such as Aes Sedai do. So best they can do is to use their traditional remedies to heal them, which they do. And cue a lot of Rand putting his foot down again. Egwene asks him about his experience, but one of the wise ones, Bear, she forbids Rand to tell anything that happened. Lan is understandably still pissed about Moraine going with him. We find out that he was actually being held forcefully not to go with her there, because they left on the same day, a bit later after Rand. So what happens next? Rand insists on discussing what he saw, so he asks Ruark about what he has seen in Radiant, because he is a chieftain, I suppose, as the other chieftain had to go there. not as the chief of chieftains, because Rand is the first one, but as a normal chieftain, leader of his clan, his sept, I guess, he had to go there as well. So all of them exchange glances and murmur about changes again. And Rand reiterates that he intends to shake things up a bit. He intends to bring changes. So Rourke explains him a few things, and Rand now understands that some of the intricacies around the Aiel War, the Tree Cutter King, and Rand also learned about his parentage. He learns about his mother, who escaped from the wetlands because of the prophecy she's been told by the Aes Sedai, which her name escapes me, but rings familiar to Rand. So she ran away from a man she did not love, but she had to leave a child. She did, and she had another child when she became a maiden, a spear maiden in the Aiel Wastes, and she had a child, Rand, there. And Rand seeks guidance from Rourke because he seems to be in a hurry. He wants to unite the clans because he wants to make a move against the Forsaken, and he wants to do it fast. So he demands sort of a plan to address them and reveal himself to all of them. So Rourke suggests using dream walking by the Amos and others, because it will be too long to gather all of the messengers. So the wise ones agree. Also, a man demonstrates his knowledge of Old Tongue, even though I don't think he still fully realizes it because he just goes with the flow. What else? After that, Rand is lost in thought. He is not eating much to the frustration of Wise Ones and Egwene. But Avienda shows up, and shortly after her, Moraine shows up, and both of them look worse to wear. Also, there is this question, because even though he is to unite the Aiel people, there's also prophecy of destroying them in the process. But it's, as always, the thing with prophecies is a bit later we find out that yes, he is destined to destroy them in the process, but in doing so he will also rebuild them. Those who remain, those who stay, will become saved. Well, not saved, but maybe saved. They will have a future, essentially. This is all terribly reminding me of Fremen, I must say, but more about that later. So Avienda returns, so does Moraine, and Egwene has a chat with Elaine, because Elaine now has the Angreal, which allows her to go into the dreams, even though she's not as proficient or talented as Egwene. So they chat there, but in the middle of their chat session in the dreamland, Egwene is grabbed by the Amos and beaten into submission, almost, because, well, Egwene prior to this, when she arrived to the Oasis, she promised to Amos not to dream alone, unsupervised, and she just takes it very badly. She did not know that Aes Sedai could lie, because Egwene still insists on being Green Aja, a full Aes Sedai. So she humiliates Egwene, teaches her a lesson, makes her wear braids until she can, be a woman, show herself that she can follow instructions. But there is also a sort of a meeting, a gathering of wise ones and Moraine and Aviendha, where they have this gathering where they decide what to do with Rand. He has proven himself as the one who comes at dawn with dawn, sure, but he does not know Aiel culture, their ways, and he will need some kind of guidance with that. So who could instruct him? Ruark is sadly out of the question, because he's a great leader, but he's not a great peacemaker. Because there is this thing as water oath, I think, that prevents the tribes from attacking one another, even though they have blood feuds. But other than that, they do not know. They do suggest Aviendha to follow him, which makes her very angry. She loudly proclaims that she hates him, hates his guts. But Egwene asks her nicely to do it for Elaine, because Elaine is also a close friend, so please do it. You don't have to. No one's suggesting that you betray Elaine's trust or get involved with him or anything of the sort. Just try to support him. Which is, if you ask me, a weird decision, but I don't know. I mean, so there we go, the chapters 25 to 35. Now let's go on to
3 questions.
Well, I have a leftover question from Rand's vision. I do not think this was a throwaway line, because I don't think Robert Jordan does throw away lines and just leaves them. But there was a mention in his vision, during his visions of the past, of finding a single unified source of channeling that could be drawn upon by male and female users alone, an untainted source. Does this ever get, I wouldn't say resolved, because I don't think it's a threat, but it is a curious thing. Will it be addressed? Hopefully. Maybe Brown Aja knows something about this. Question number 2, but even though I think I have an answer to that, who is the Slayer character? I think I know who he is as a person, but what I'm asking is, what is he? Because I don't think he is fully human, if he is human at all. Maybe he was human at some point, but I don't know. Another question is, so there was a mention of the last hunt again. So is this like the symbolic just last battle against Shaitan, like Ragnarok, or is it something else? Or is it some kind of a struggle, some kind of jihad? Who knows? So, did I pay attention well? Alana Maswani, the other Aes Sedai, she is Brown Aja, right? Maybe it's a stupid question, and I'm sorry if it is. Do Brown Aja bond? because brown eyes are the ones that seek out knowledge, right? I should know this. Because she behaves nothing like the other one, the nice one. So, another question. There has been a mention, well, the nice one, Varen, I mean. Varen mentioned about them being on a mission to recruit female channelers for the tower. And she mentions something that has been mentioned before, that the reason, a possible theory that explains why there have been less and less candidates that could channel every year is because, well, the male channelers are almost driven to extinction, and maybe what's the reason for so little of them. But there is also a question about, will a male channeler, if gentle, produce possibly an offspring that is a female and a channeler. So is the capacity to channel hereditary? Also, there seems to be a distinction between a girl, a woman who can be taught to channel, and those with an inborn capability. But isn't that the same thing? Because if you can be taught, that means you have the capacity, and if you have the capacity, that means you've been born with it. What's the distinction here? It seems to me like it's the same thing. I mean, Nynaeve, yeah, she's a natural. I think she is born with it. Egwene was taught, but she was taught very quickly. But also, Egwene was considered to be a wilder. So what's the difference there? Genetics, how do they work here? Another question, which is kind of a open-ended one. I'm just curious, will we see Shan-chan in this book? I don't think we will. It seems to me that this book is already packed with a lot of stuff as it is, so I don't think they will be making a move. But they might as well. I suppose not, but who knows? I will surely find out. I also have a question, which is probably silly, but is there a method to Palan Fane's madness? Like half of the time he seems completely insane, but he has a goal. He is obsessed with the three Taviran, Rand specifically, Rand especially. But does he have a goal of his own that is separate? Does he have just any kind of long-term plan, or is he just hyper-focused on getting his revenge against Rand and the Tower and everyone else? Let's move on to what I liked. And I like a lot of stuff. Honestly, there's very little things that I disliked in this section. I continue to enjoy the constant just building upon world building. Like the fact that wolves can die in Dream World. Not to mention that there is someone who can physically exist there. That's new for me. The Beslayer character. That's fascinating. On a lighter note, Gol, the Ale who has a blood debt to Perrin, he's just a bro. Let's face it, he's a good dude. I like him a lot. Also, I always appreciate when just causality, cause and effect, is brought up in subtle ways. Aes Sedai are always recruiting new potential candidates, and every year there are less and less of them. Now, as I mentioned, one of the theories is that's because the male channels are being eradicated. Also, the fact that Aes Sedai cannot channel inside of a setting. I don't think it was mentioned before. If it was, I missed it, but that's also an interesting tidbit. Also, I am eternally, endlessly amused by how blind white cloaks are to the world around them. They are so incredibly blind. Their worldview is so narrow, and it's not, yes, they're prejudiced, but you'd think that they would realize that being so incredibly blind to everything would make them less efficient in their mission, their holy mission. But no, they're just stumble in the dark, being incredibly cruel in the process, hurting a lot of innocent people, doing more evil. I don't know if they even do any good at all, but just in terms of succeeding in their mission, they're so incredibly inept, even though they have all the tools that should make them. But I guess it's with any power structure, right? Well, here we have the the White Tower, the Tarvalin. Tarvalin is infiltrated by Black Aja, and Black Aja are not a new thing. They have been for centuries, right? So even as powerful and as sophisticated of a power structure as White Tower, they will be prone to corruption and just mistakes. But the level of incompetence of White Cloaks is just, it's amazing. I live for it, especially when they get humiliated. I also, another thing about Aiel that I find interesting, I find it interesting that they have a policy for male channelers to go to Sheol, and they go there to fight the Dark One, and they all perish before they go mad. So they're not banished there, they go mad there. And this is another Dune parallel, because in Dune we also have a tribalistic society that when there's something wrong with you, and in the case of Dune, if you go blind, and since the life in the desert is incredibly harsh, you willingly go to the desert and you have to survive yourself and no one comes back. Well, not if your name is Paul Atreides, but it's kind of the same principle, and every time I'm just reminded how much of an influence Dune was. Not Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings was maybe a bit, I wouldn't say an inspiration. I think Robert Jordan paid homage in Eye of the World, but other than that, it's Dune all the way. From Aes Sedai being Bene Gesserit to Aiel being Fremen. I mean, even Roark is kind of a... I guess you could stretch it out. But yeah, even Roark is a mentor figure to Rand. So, yeah, it's not a slight against Robert Jordan, but I'm not saying he's plagiarizing. Having influences is great. What else? I just want to quote one short passage. It's a exchange between Matt and Rand, and I found it very amusing. What are you going to do now? Matt asked. Something you should like. I'm going to break the rules. No, I mean, are you going to get something to eat? Me, I'm hungry. And Rand started to laugh. It was just, I really appreciated the comedic relief there. And let's move to things that I didn't like and it's just a short point that I have. And I don't think it's even a criticism. I don't think it's a negative point as so. I'm just a bit confused as to why Aviendha has this searing hatred of Rand. I understand not liking the duty of guarding him, sure, but she's taking it personal. On the other hand, Rand seems to appreciate, because Aviendha hates him not because he is a foreigner who came there and proclaimed himself to be Dragon Reborn and Chief of Chiefs and all that, and because he's breaking tradition. No, he likes her or appreciates her hating him because, well, he's Randall Thor and I hate you. That's why. I just don't understand where does the hatred come from, because she is, Aviendha, I mean, she is incredibly loyal to Elaine. Okay. She did not spend that much of a time with Elaine to be so incredibly protective to the point where she actively despises a man who somewhat upset her friend, maybe. It's weird. Then again, same thing happens with Fail and her followers, the Spear Sisters that are following her. They also seem to have it for Perrin. They also seem to dislike him because they were in a fight. It's so weird. It's on both of these accounts, both Fail and Aviendha, and they're like, these are teenage quibbles. It's behave like adults. But then again, adults don't often behave like adults today. And so, 2 predictions for the end.
Well, it's only a guess, but it's all I have to go on.
So Alana Masvani, both Alana Masvani and Elaida, there was a quote about them showing interest in Rand, according to Egwene. And, well, Rand is even warned against, not Rand, I'm sorry, Perrin. Perrin is even warned about Alana. So Elaida is, I presume, still plotting her conspiracy in the tower. But we know nothing about Alana yet, about why do we need to be warned about her. Varian warns about her. So, is she like Aja? Or is she just a scheming Aes Sedai who has her own selfish goals? We'll see. And prediction number 2, I do think that there are strong hints that Lord Luke is the Slayer. He just seems to me to stick out too much. I think that's a coincidence. Now, whether he works with Padan Thane or not, or is he some kind of an independent dark friend agent, that's another thing entirely. I'm just curious about what is he. He's clearly not a regular human being. So that was that. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time. Bye.